Hi, Heather.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. We've got people on Zoom as well as in person at the meeting. So we are thrilled you are joining us. We enjoyed your book very much.
Thank you.
And I'm going to credit my colleague Lee, who is not with us, for writing our discussion questions today. I don't want to take credit for these because she is the brilliant mind behind this interview. So I'm going to give her credit. She wasn't able to be with us today. I think she's bike riding today.
Okay, well, good for her.
Which you'll see when this first question where it comes from, because it's about a trail. So Wicklow reminded me of the actual town of Piedmont, Alabama. The Chief Ladiga Trail cuts right through the center of the town, and it is a favorite rest stop for cyclists riding from Alabama to Georgia and back. The town has embraced this and misses no opportunity to get riders to stop and spend money. As you wrote Midnight at the Blackbird Cafe, how did you research the issues related to small town economic survival?
Oh, goodness. You guys are jumping right in. Okay, let's see. So I wanted a small town that was down on its luck. And I don't actually know where Piedmont is in Alabama. The town I had in mind was Mentone, that area up in the mountains. I kind of married Mentone with Fairhope. So, kind of a interesting marriage, to be sure. But that's the area I had in mind, up in the mountains with the trails up there. But I wanted a small kind of community feeling where I don't know how many have been to Mentone, but it's not what I had pictured, except for the location. It's a very sweet town, but only has those few shops along that main stretch. And I needed more of a town that was really down on its luck, that had kind of that Main Street feeling, with the courthouse and all of that. So, we all lived through the recession 10, 12 years ago, and that was kind of the basis of it. These towns that were really hit by the impact of that, and especially artistic towns that are based on craftsmanship and people who make their living through the arts. So I knew I wanted to really delve into that and go along with that. So it's not hard when you live through it to kind of build on that.
And those are both great towns. Been to both of them, and I can see how you married those two towns in creating Wicklow.
Yeah.
At Hoover Library, we talk a good deal about the concept of third place. That's the place you go that isn't home or work, but it is your center for community. Blackbird Cafe is definitely a third place. What are the qualities that make it the place where your characters gather?
Oh, like you said, for me, it's community. It's kind of wherever that gathering place, and I think I have it in just about every book I've ever written has a place like that in it. So for Blackbird, it's the cafe where everybody kind of goes, they share their news. It's the place where you go first if you want the gossip. It's kind of a happy place. It's I don't know, it's just that place where you kind of feel like home, home away from home. And for my book Buttonwood, that would be a bookshop. And for Sugarberry Cove, well, actually, maybe I don't have a gathering place in Sugarberry Cove other than the lake in general, for that gathering spot. And but I like those sense of a place where community draws in, because I want that in my own. I don't really have that in my own life, and I would love that in my own life. So I kind of write the places that I would want to go to, and also the people I would want to be around.
Love that. We try to be a third place here at Hoover Library. We talk about that. Like, we want to be a community center, not just a library.
Oh, libraries are great for that. Yeah.
And I have to give you a shout out. You definitely know libraries, because you did not go with the typical stereotype of librarian. I read that part just a little while ago about the pink streaks and the middle-aged librarian's hair. And yes, you know librarians.
I have a couple of good friends who are librarians, so I would have been in the doghouse if I had gotten that wrong.
We love it.
Good.
Wicklow is a dream community. How do you structure an ideal community in the world of a novel? What are the elements that make it a perfect community?
I don't really strive for perfection so much as I do reality. Especially, I really wanted to express, like in Blackbird, for example, everybody in that book is kind of broken in some way or another, and it was my desire to fix everybody. Um, and Wicklow is included in that. Like Wicklow was a broken town. It was down on its luck. It needed a refurbishment or a renovation or revitalization, um, and and I wanted to really express that not every town has like a booming economy. There are places that need a little extra help, need a little extra love. And I love revitalization committees. I mean, we have them here in Ohio throughout, trying to just give back and bring back these communities to life. I always try to picture what I would like in a small town. I want, a coffee shop. I want a bookstore. I want, a little gift shop. But I want quirky people too. I don't want just, your Stepford type of people. I want people that have real emotions and flaws and strengths and weaknesses. So I try to all mash that up together, and um, I try to have like the loners, like Aubin and Blackbird. He's kind of a loner. Like there's people who are just loners and they're happy that way, and I don't really want to change that. I just want to, kind of represent those people.
At the heart of this novel are the intergenerational conflicts between mothers and daughters. What is it about our culture that fosters this sort of conflict between women that should be each other's support?
I don't know the answer to that. I wish I did. I'd probably be like, self-help guru or something. I don't know. There's always there's a lot of mother-daughter relationships out there that are wonderful, that are absolutely wonderful. But if I wrote those stories, there's no conflict to drive the story. So I think that's why we see more stories where there is a conflict, because otherwise there'd be 300 pages of "You're wonderful, I love you too, you're so great, you're perfect, no, you're perfect." There's no story there. So conflict is what drives stories. So that's what I kind of focus around. But I do think that there are a lot of mother-daughter relationships that are not good, and have their struggles, and some of those relationships can be repaired and some can't. So I try to focus around the ones that can be repaired. Um, just because I'm a fixer by nature. And if I can write it and fix it, I struggle with writing. When I first wrote Blackbird, my editor said, "Everybody's too nice." And I was like, all right, all right. So I had to roughen some people up, but that's the kind of world I want to live in. So I tend to write it that way.
Characters in the book struggled with PTSD and trauma. What sort
Mhm.
of research did you do to learn about how trauma manifests and impacts people's lives?
Oh gosh, I feel like I'm always doing research on psychology. I have folders and folders of online folders of just articles about psychology and trauma and childhood wounds and things like that. My oldest son was in the army, so I know through him what he experienced when he went over to Afghanistan. He didn't thankfully come home with PTSD, but he had buddies who did, and it's a real struggle. And I didn't. The book wasn't about that, but I wanted to touch on that because it's very real to a lot of people.
I agree. I was pleased to see that you sent Natalie to therapy rather than having her try to work through her problems on her own. Do you
Yes.
think that doing that for her changed her arc of development as a character?
I mean, anytime you can recognize that you're struggling with something and that you cannot fix it yourself, I think changes the arc of yourself. So, of course, it would change her arc as a character. Like she finally recognized that I cannot do this by myself. As long as she struggled to do it by herself, she finally had to recognize that she cannot. So that was a big turning point for her, even in coming back to Wicklow, to get help from a community, from her family, even though she wasn't super close with them.
Writing is a business, and you've published in several subgenres.
Yes.
Please explain to us the business of positioning a novel between romance, historical romance, cozy mysteries, supernatural mysteries, and women's fiction. Why do you think publishing has so finely split up the different subgenres you work in?
You know, this is actually a big discussion in the writing community. As writers, we really don't get a say in that kind of thing. You turn your book into your publisher, and they kind of decide where to go with it. A good example for this is actually my Lucy Valentine series that came out in 2009. I wrote it originally as a mystery series, um, but it also had elements of supernatural in it. It was my first step into the supernatural world. She's psychic, and but it also had a good deal of romance in it. And so they didn't quite know where to put it on a bookshelf. So if I went into a bookstore, if I went into three bookshops, one shop it would be filed under fiction, one shop it would be filed under romance, one shop it would be filed under mystery. Like they didn't quite know where it fit. And I think I don't know why it's not just all fiction. I think readers are smarter than they give them credit for. Um, but I do know that there's readers who are very much just about mystery. I only want mystery. I don't want romance. I don't want any woo-woo stuff. Just give me, the mystery. And so those people who might pick up my book and find out that there's a little bit of romance, there's little bit of magic in it, they might be disappointed and then, be angry that they spent their money on that. But for Blackbird, especially, it's had such a huge welcoming in all genres of all readers. I've been so lucky with it that I've had readers say, I don't really read magical realism. I don't know what that is, but I loved your book. Or, I don't really read Southern fiction that much, but I loved your book. So I love that a reader will give a book a chance. So I don't know how the publishers quite decide where to put it, but as long as it gets to readers, I'm happy.
Does your writing method change as you work in the different styles that you use? And how would you approach a book that needs more research versus one that contains more magical reality?
So every book needs a lot of research. It does, even the magic in the books needs a lot of research. It's kind of crazy. I love research, so I'm happy to go down those rabbit holes. But the biggest change for me from going, because I wrote mysteries for so many years. I wrote, I don't know, 25, 26 mysteries before I switched to single titles. Um, and they were mystery series. All my books before these standalone books, the last four, have been series. So the biggest change for me from going to series to writing Blackbird was that I was really used to creating subplots that carried over into the next book. So they weren't necessarily cliffhangers, but I might have had, so I wrote a series called the Wishcraft series. They're magical witches in Salem, Massachusetts. They're very cute. They're very Disney-esque, lovable witches. And from the beginning of that series, there was an underlying mystery thread with what happened to her mother. And there was this other character, and that whole arc didn't wrap up until the ninth book. So it wove through every book until the very last book in the series. And I didn't have that in Blackbird. So I was like, oh, I have to wrap up all these threads. And I probably had to cut 20,000 words from this book because I just overwrote it trying to wrap it all up. So it was a learning process.
For this novel, you used a framed narrative of the reporter interviews and switched between first and third person narrators. Why did you use those different narrative styles to keep the story moving forward?
So I have Anna, Kate, and I had Natalie's points of view, but I really kind of wanted the town's point of view without giving everybody a point of view. So I needed kind of something that would work in touching base with the people in the town without having it in their perspective. And I was able to do that through the reporter. The reporter didn't need a first person point of view, so it was easier to do that through because it wasn't his story. He was just kind of the method in which I got the information to the reader. So he didn't really need his own point of view, but every person, I kind of call it my Greek chorus. Those little snippets are actually really important to the story. They are either foreshadowing or they're giving you a little back history that my main characters might not know otherwise. Um, so it was just a way to convey information, but I loved it. I might do it again. I kind of love that little. I had it in Buttonwood and South of the Buttonwood Tree, the book after this after Blackbird. I have a judge's point of view, and he opens. I think it's every other chapter. Um, but in the Lights of Sugarberry Cove, I didn't have it, and the one I just wrote, I have it in diary entries from a woman who has been missing for um, 50, 60 years. So I kind of go back and forth with having that third point of view in there somewhere. And I just like having that little bit extra freedom.
I'm just curious. This is not in Lee's questions, but I didn't find the answer to this in my own research. You really seem to know Alabama, and I'm curious, do you have an Alabama connection?
So I do now. I fell in love with Alabama in 2007. I had gone down, I was writing mysteries at the time, and I had gone down for the Murder in the Magic City Mystery Conference, which was in Birmingham. And they have a sister event in Wetumpka. And I had never been there before, and I flew down, it was February, and I had to rent a car in Birmingham to drive to Wetumpka. And somewhere on that drive, 90 minutes and around there, I just fell in love. Something happened to me on that drive. I had the windows down. It was a mild day, and it was like back roads with the kudzu, and there were beautiful farmhouses, and then there was rested out buses, and there was just this whole big world, and I just felt like it felt like home to me. There was just something in the air, that little bit of magic. I call it Southern magic, that just hit me. And I came home and I was like, all right, we can't move there because my husband's job was up here. And I was like, but if I can't move there, I'm going to write about it. So I actually started writing a mystery series. It's published. It's my Potion Shop mystery series. It's set in a little town outside of Huntsville. They're written under Heather Blake. And I was just like, I love this. And then when I finally had the chance to write the standalones, I was debating where to set it. And I'm like, these are definitely Southern books. It's like the South has that little bit of, it just has that little bit of magic to it, that little bit of noir, that kind of Southern Gothic feeling to it. And I was like, I'm going back home. So if I can't live there, I'm going to write about it. And so I decided all my standalones would be set there. Now I say that, but I haven't traveled south extensively. So, if I happen to go into Mississippi and love that, I might write a book there too. But for now, I'm in Alabama. I've got the 4 that are out, and Hickory Lane is coming out in a few weeks. And then the one I'm writing now is set at the Gulf Shores area. And the next one I'm contracted for will be, I think it's going to be in the Eufaula area. So we'll see. I haven't quite pinpointed it yet, but it's getting there.
Tell us about the next book that's coming out.
So the next book that's coming out, I've had Midnight at Blackbird Cafe, then South of the Buttonwood Tree, and then The Lights of Sugarberry Cove. And the one that's coming out in a few weeks is In the Middle of Hickory Lane, which I set in a fictional town called Sweetgrass, which I plopped right in the middle between Fairhope and Daphne. So it is I just popped it right there. I like to use fictional towns because people are very territorial about their towns, and I don't want to get anything wrong. So I will reference, like in Blackbird, you notice the references to Fort Payne. Like I kind of want the reader to know the area I'm in, so you can kind of get a general idea of where it is on a map. But I didn't want to use Mentone. Like I want my own town so I can fictionalize it and make it my own, and nobody will get mad at me. So that one is set in near Fairhope and Daphne, and it's about 2 women who need to kind of learn that their pasts don't define them. They've been really traumatized, and there's a magical garden in this cul-de-sac street, and they kind of learn the truths about themselves and their families, and kind of that phrase, you grow through what you go through, kind of just really defines the whole story.
We live in interesting times. How
Oh,
has
yes.
the last several turbulent years impacted your writing? And do you find yourself being able to work more or having to give yourself breaks more often?
So now it's not so bad that, the world's kind of opened up. When it first happened, so I live with my husband and two of my grown children, and they were never home when before the COVID hit. And so I have my office, and I would just work in the mornings and have my own space and time. But then COVID hit, and everybody was home, and my office doesn't have doors, so I'm very easily distracted. It'd be like, oh, do you want a cup of tea? Or you want to watch a show? Do you want to do this? You want to go for a walk? And it was just like, so I was on deadline. I was actually on deadline for Sugarberry Cove. And I finally had to take my whole laptop, my work table, into my bedroom, close the doors, and was like, please, I can't. I need to finish this book. So that was interesting. And of course, in Sugarberry Cove, I don't know how many of you have read that. There's kind of a thread with a young woman whose aunt was dying in the book. And at first, I was going to make it COVID, and then I was like, it just didn't feel right. Like it was too much. Like, we're living it. I don't want to read about it. And that's when I decided I probably will never mention COVID in my books. Like, we are all living through it. I don't want to be like, oh yeah, remember this? We're still living through this. I don't, books are a place to escape. And for me, I know there's plenty of authors who do it and do it well. But for me, I just decided to make that choice not to mention it.
Awesome. Is there anything